Wow.
Now
So,
for your issue about
let's see, before we go back there, why do you think our leaders don't attempt? See, I'm using the word attempt because to me, many of my country's leaders have not even attempted any of these commitments, such commitments. Why?
Okay. And where you're referring to country leaders, political leaders.
Yes.
Okay. So I think it's two things. Firstly, we must talk about the demand and the supply of leadership.
Okay. Hey.
The quality of the leaders we have is a demand and supply issue.
Yeah.
Until the consumer, aka
me and
electorate, citizens,
yeah,
me and you, until we demand a better quality of leadership, we're going to get who we get.
Yeah.
So that's one side of it, right? It's about what are people demanding from their leaders? What lengths are we going to make leaders accountable? The bar is too low. The entry bar is too low for leadership positions. But also, if I tie this in with what you brought on earlier about, post-independence and independence leaders.
Yeah.
If we're being fair, you realize that there had to be people who were going to go to the bush, quote unquote. Some places it was an actual bush, in some places it wasn't an actual bush, but there had to have been people who did the fighting. That had to happen. Okay.
Yeah.
We had to get that independence, and that was the only way it was going to happen, because years and years of being non-confrontational had produced nothing for us. That was the time and that was the era. That was the only way change was going to come about.
Okay.
Once that change had come about, what needed to happen is that the leaders who went who fought for these causes, a lot of them didn't maintain the drive that made them go out to that fight in the first place. They came back, and suddenly, years and years and centuries of poverty, of not having access to your own resources and so forth, brought out a strain of some type of greed. And this is, of course, is not applicable to everyone. Not every single person was like this. But I just want to shorten the story by saying it's a combination of compensatory, a desire to be compensated. I went to war and therefore you must compensate me.
Yeah.
Okay. It's my turn. I fought for this country.
Okay.
It's my turn now. And not that beyond now view. Because there wasn't a plan for, okay, what happens afterwards? After we come in, we get the power, what happens? What we find, and I was talking about this yesterday in one of my coaching sessions, is that we found that, so if a leader comes in and they are not committed to being a worthy custodian, and so for each of the commitments, I break down the principles that anchor each commitment.
Yeah.
And one of the principles that anchors the commitment of being a worthy custodian is being committed to undoing systemic prejudice. Now, if you get into whatever office it is and you don't commit to undoing prejudice, what tends to happen is that you realize how that prejudicial position, how it benefited your predecessor. And you keep that on. In practical terms, it's like keeping on draconian colonial laws that made it possible for the colonialists to oppress people. A lot of presidents, African presidents who went to the bush or who fought for the country, who are so-called liberation heroes, have not repealed those laws. because those laws give them the same powers that their oppressors had.
Yeah.
And they've realized that, oh, this is the way I can amass power. So you see, that is further ingraining systemic prejudice and not undoing it. So that, why don't they have that commitment? Demand and supply. We are not demanding better from our leaders.
Yeah.
The second thing is that the more exposed and the more, how do I say this tactfully? Get in trouble here. But anyway, I've never cared much for being in trouble. You see, I think the generations that have had more access to opportunities, by default, have got better risk assessment capabilities.
Yes. Yes.
And they're no longer, the world and society is no longer in the zero-sum position that the struggle had us in. You were dying either way in the struggle. So were you going to die in service of your country, or were you going to die hungry, right? And being oppressed and downtrodden. So that was like pushed against the wall. We had to do that. But now with more opportunities, you and I are unlikely to take to the streets with weapons or with whatever. And I'm not saying that's what we need to do. I'm saying that our ability to risk assess or to find other opportunities,
other means, yes.
Other means are so many. You know, I'll just leave. You know, I'm Zimbabwean, and that's the main solution.
I'm in England.
Just leave.
The same thing. Yeah.
Exactly. You know, there comes a point where you've tried, and then you are like, truly at the end of the day, I have kids.
Yeah.
And I have to feed them, and I have a career, and I have this, and I want to do X, Y, Z. So there is less and less, and rightly so, less and less appetite for that.